Yeah, let's set this up. I guess before we talk about what happened in the whispered silently, quietly, maybe title race, let's talk about maybe Leipzig against Dortmund because I think it's just better we combine the Bayern game and the Leverkusen game as sort of as one package later on in the show. I was on Saturday in Leipzig. This was I like to call it the derby of angst because these are two teams that are obviously way better than the table suggests. I mean, situation not quite as dire for Leipzig. They're now fifth, right? Dortmund are in absolute no man's land. 11th in the table after this 2-0 defeat to Leipzig. But going into this match, I mean, I put this question to Marco Rose in the pre-game press conference. Leipzig had only won 2 games out of 10. And, you could tell when you talk to players and the coach that the pressure was real. There was a real sense of frustration that results were poor, that they were slipping away from the Champions League spots. And to be honest with you, Stefan, when I started watching this game, you could tell that both those teams, were not playing with the most confidence. There was a lot of individual mistakes, a lot of passing mistakes. Ultimately, Leipzig did open the scoring early on, took the lead, and then made it 2-0, and then kind of just sat it out, and really benefited from the fact that Dortmund couldn't score a goal to save their own lives. And I think that was really interesting to watch because this is also a game that could have ended 2-3 in Dortmund's favor.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's such an interesting game because I saw a lot of people talking about the stats after the match and how Dortmund had a higher XG than Leipzig, and you're right, Dortmund could have scored 2 or 3 goals in the second half, but I think you have to kind of take it all into the context of the fact that almost all of Dortmund's XG. I mean, I think of the total 3.11 that I've gone three in front of me, 2.77 of that came in the second half, and obviously almost all that came after Leipzig's second goal. Leipzig obviously decided after the second goal, we're going to sit back, soak up the pressure, and just kind of see how this works. They were lucky. Galassi pulled off some outstanding saves. It's easily the best game I've seen from him this season. But equally, I think they ceded control of the match to Dortmund because they'd already won it to a large extent. And you're right, Dortmund just didn't have any kind of way of kind of fighting back there. It was a game that kind of played out the way I actually thought it would do. I said this in the previous show. Leipzig have been better against good teams at home this season. They've beaten Freiburg 3-1. They came really close in the Champions League, even though they lost all their games, but they ran Juventus close, ran Liverpool close, ran Aston Villa close, beaten Frankfurt twice at home, beat Wolfsburg recently, who are no slouches, drew with Leverkusen. So it's not really what I would say anything that I think you could really chalk up to Marco Rose's tactics or system. It seems to me like it's just a squad of decent players who all seem to get up for these games when a decent team comes to town, and they all want to show what they can do. Xavi Simons is a perfect example of that. We spoke in the previous show about how he'd kind of been made the scapegoat for this season. In the reports last week, he steps up, scores a great goal, assists the second one. And he was causing Dortmund all sorts of problems. He had this kind of on-off thing with Rierson, which was quite interesting, was quite funny. And you could tell he'd gone under their skin. But I don't know, it just felt like another Dortmund game where Niko Kovac just sways from one extreme to the other. We've talked about this so many times in the last 5 or 6 weeks. I keep going back to these fullbacks. He just doesn't seem to know what he's doing. Valdemar Anton at right back was a suicide move from Dortmund, and I just don't understand how Kovac watched Anton in that position, and I think it was in the last game, and thought, yeah, he'll be perfect against David Raum, Benjamin Sesko, and Xavi Simons on that left-hand side. He struggled throughout the match, and, I don't know, it was a bizarre move. I mean, I'm not the biggest advocate for someone like Bensebaini, but surely for the sake of balance, you're better having Rierson on the right-hand side to deal with those players if he's your best fullback.
Yeah.
And then having Bensebaini on the left-hand side because he can at least offer some sort of cover and something going forward, where Anton just did offer nothing either way. again, Julian Brandt was in the team. Again, he did nothing. I thought he was completely anonymous throughout the match. Even when Dortmund were actually kind of, in their ascendancy in the second half and looking to score goals, it was more or less through Guirassy, it was through Bayer, it was through Gross, it was through Adeyemi. This is like the fifth or sixth game in a row where I've just watched Dortmund and Julian Brandt has just done absolutely nothing, and I don't understand why he keeps getting back into this team. I made a joke in a subscriber chat that maybe he has some compromising photos of Niko Kovac, which is why he keeps getting into the team. And then I added the compromising photos are, of course, his record at Wolfsburg as Wolfsburg head coach. And it's getting to this point now where I'm really beginning to question what Kovac actually adds that Nuri Sahin didn't add, because he's falling for all the same problems. He's struggling with consistency, doesn't know what his best starting 11 is. He seems to be meddling for meddling's sake. This is all echoes of what happened under Nuri Sahin. And it's hugely concerning. It's not really a big concern when Dortmund lose an away game, I guess, this season, because they've been terrible in general, but in away games. But I just thought the way they approached this game was very naive. And if I was a Dortmund fan, I'd just have more questions than answers after that 90 minutes.
Yeah, I spoke to some people that cover Borussia Dortmund full time. It's a very good crew of journalists that they have, and it's just, we said this all season, right? First, when you ask them what's going wrong, and they all just kind of shrug, and then they go into this long tirade of it's Kehl, it's Watzke, it's Mislintat who's now gone, and it's all these different decision makers, and one person wants to have this, another person wants to have that, and then the decision to hire Nuri Sahin as head coach was an absolute disaster. And then they mentioned that Niko Kovac is just, he works hard, but he doesn't give any creativity to this team, and it's just a parade of non-decisions. And Hans-Joachim Watzke seems to be more interested in state politics right now in North Rhine-Westphalia than he is in Borussia Dortmund. He's quite involved with that. So, it's just a lot of things coming together all at once. And I think that, as it often is the case, the fish stinks from the head. And that's I think what's going on here. And, this whole idea that it's all going to get fixed in the summer. I think I wrote in my full-time report for Gegenpressing that if Dortmund had to start thinking of the day after tomorrow, failing to reach the Champions League, they now have to definitely start planning for it. I think the day is now, right? The day where they have to start thinking of what will happen when they don't reach the Champions League is now a more than realistic scenario. I think the only way to maybe get there is winning the title itself. I don't want to say that's not going to happen, because you and I have seen crazier things, including last season. So who knows what's going to happen? But I think, the planning is now starting, and I think that's in earnest. And I think it will include every single position in this club. It will include the squad planning. It will include getting rid of a whole bunch of high-earning players and reset the squad. It will be including identifying 3 or 4 key players that you want to build this team around. And I wrote this with the exception of maybe Adeyemi and Riasson. You can probably sell everyone in this team. Maybe Schlotterbeck you probably want to keep around as well, because one day, and I spoke to some people, and it's he's such an amazing footballer. Once he figures out how to defend, he's going to be incredible. But he will, eventually. I'm convinced of this. It reminds me of Jerome Boateng, who also was always an amazing footballer. And then once he figured out how to defend, he won a World Cup with Germany, right? He will get there eventually. But I think, Stefan, the time has now come where they have to sit down, and they probably, really have to go through the squad and completely restructure. And there's going to be a couple of years of pain here.
Yeah, I said after the game that this is now the 13th time in 26 league games that Dortmund have gone behind in a football match in the Bundesliga, and in all but 11 of them, sorry, in 11 of them, they've gone on to lose the match. So only 2 occasions in 13 have they actually managed to even dig themselves out of the hole they've started. Now, that says to me, and this is what I said on social media, it's either a squad that don't care or they're just not good enough to fix the problems or find solutions to the problems that they find themselves in this season. I think it's about both. And, I drew this comparison to Manchester United on social media because I was saying, like Manchester United this season, they're a club crippled by inaction. They're a club crippled by the hierarchy, still believing that the big earners at the club are good enough to get them to where they want to be when they're clearly not. And we've talked about that plenty of times. That your Nicolas Sulas, your Emre Cans, guys like that. Everyone at the club, every time you speak to someone at Dortmund, like, oh yeah, Emre Can's fantastic, he's amazing. The guy takes penalties. Like, it's just like, what? He's now the 3rd head coach at Dortmund, Niko Kovac, that is, who still thinks Emre Can has to be the first name on that team sheet. And there's clearly something in that club where people are pushing these calls. And like Manchester United, terrible recruitment has kind of led to this situation where the squad's just simply not good enough. And it doesn't actually really matter who the head coach is. You could have Sebastian Hoeneß in there, you could have Thomas Tuchel in there, you could have Xabi Alonso in there. With this squad, there's only so much you can do because after years and years and years of mismanagement in the transfer window, it's a squad that I think man for man isn't in the top 4 in the Bundesliga. I don't think the squad on its day is as good as Bayern's, it's not as good as Leverkusen's, it's not as good as Stuttgart's, it's not as good as Leipzig's, as we saw the weekend there. Frankfurt, there's probably a few other teams as well you could throw in there as well. And the fear is that I don't think anyone at Dortmund has truly accepted that yet. Maybe Niko Kovac has. Maybe that was part of the conversations when he took the job. He said, I need to make sure I can sign plenty of players in the summer. We're still not even sure if he'll be the head coach next season, of course, because reports come out every week saying that they're humming and hawing over him as well. But yeah, it's a complete mess. And I think this Leipzig game was just the latest example of Dortmund coming up against not even a good team, maybe the 4th or best team in the Bundesliga.
Fourth.
And they just didn't match them whatsoever. And we're now in a situation where they're now, 15 points off the relegation playoff zone, but about, 27 off first place. So they're far closer to relegation than they are to first place. And they deserve to be there. Simple as that.
And there's not much time, right? Because Club World Cup means that the summer, like the next season starts sooner than usual because like the teams in the Club World Cup have like a separate transfer window. So if you want to make decisions, you have to make those soon. And I guess like, there's this wonderful German word called Planungssicherheit, planning security. Of course, in German it's all one word. And I guess the only security that they have is that they're probably not going to be playing in Europe next year. Forget Champions League. It's not even going to be Europa League or Conference League. Like, there's just, I think, 7 teams in the Bundesliga that are better than them. And that's the reality at the moment. Touching on Leipzig too, the entire weekend I was there, everyone said, like, we need to get in the Champions League. We need to get in the Champions League. They're building a brand new facility. They're hiring people on and off the field. The budget is being increased significantly. Jurgen Klopp was in Leipzig on Sunday to finalize squad planning for next season. He sat down with Marcel Schäfer. It's an interesting development in itself because Jurgen Klopp initially said he wouldn't be getting involved in the day-to-day operations of clubs. But, I was talking to someone, it's like Jurgen Klopp can't help himself. Like, how long until he gets bored, right, and wants to have a full-day job? So, yeah, he flew into Leipzig. He sat down with Marcel Schäfer, and they were making some decisions. I've been told names like De Koopers and Amiri were discussed. One thing they want to do, they want to go away from just signing young players. They want to do what made Leverkusen successful, right? And add maybe some older players that can lead all the young guys. And that's probably a strategy that makes sense. Obviously, there's also been discussions about Harvey Simmons and what to do with him. He was in the news. There was a Sportbild article that the club pushed heavily against, to such an extent even that they organized a roundtable for German journalists in which Harvey Simmons was able to rectify some of the comments were made. Now, Stefan, he was excellent. This was probably his best game since coming back from an injury. And so, that is, I think, he always looks unhappy. I think that is just his personality. You will never fully get Harvey Simmons out of Harvey Simmons. But the way he played in this game was unbelievable.
Yeah, we've been kind of waiting for it, haven't we? I think he's been okay this season. I don't, like we said on the previous show, I don't think he's been as bad as some reports have suggested, or, there's reports in Germany saying that Leipzig were regretting signing him and things like that. I don't think that's really the case. I think people at the club appreciate that he's come back from an injury. He's a flair player. Sometimes these guys just take a little longer to kind of get back up to match fitness. But, and they've always been a team that have kind of built around him. So once he got taken in this game, it made sense that they kind of got flying as well. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what Leipzig do this summer, assuming they do get into the Champions League, if they can. It's a big if, because they're kind of relying on Mainz or Frankfurt to drop off, and right now it's probably going to be Frankfurt, to be honest, out of the two of them. But there's only 3 points in it, plenty of football left to play. Frankfurt are, of course, still in the Europa League as well, so that could play a huge significant part as well. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they kind of go down that route of signing like more senior players, because it is something that's been kind of lacking. And I would also say, as I've said time and time again, like, I don't want to make a big song and dance about it because I thought he was quite good against Dortmund, but I don't think that excuses the fact that Galassi has been missing for much this season. I thought in terms of form, I've gone about Orban as well, and in the middle of that park as well, they just need a huge clean up there as well. And that's whether Sesko or Openda stay as well. They need to bring in new players there as well. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what Jurgen Klopp can do. And we'll see how serious Leipzig are in the summer. But as you said, it all comes down to whether they can turn their form around. But that's now just, one defeat in 5 so far this season. It's 2 defeats in 10. They're maybe not picking up as many wins as they should be. They're still dropping points and draws, but at least it's not, the worst form right now. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
I also don't know if Mainz can keep up this level throughout the end of the year. So, we talked about them in the previous show quite a bit, and we'll have to see if they can keep up this pressure. But, ultimately, I do think the 4 best teams in Germany are probably Bayern, Leverkusen, Frankfurt, and Leipzig. To different degrees, of course. We'll see how it plays out. Dortmund can plan with a season without Champions League football. I say that now, and then they're going to win the bloody thing in Munich, because that's how it's going to go. But, as it stands right now, it doesn't look likely that's going to happen.